Hi, it's me, Vicki Marie, and in this video what I'm going to do is I'm going to just update you may have seen on the news or maybe not, about some new cases or some cold cases that are being investigated as possibly victims of BTK, Dennis Rader. Now, I did a lie on one of the Serial Killer Sundays. I talked to you about Dennis Rader, BTK. I'm going to put a link in the description to that video. So if you want the background about Dennis, he's in prison at the moment. He's in prison. He's got a life. You know, he's never going to come out of prison. And he was found guilty. He was one of those confession killers that when he was finally arrested, I mean, you know, after 30 years, through a stupid mistake, through his own ego. But anyway, I won't go into the whole thing because it's all on the other video. So when he was finally arrested, he did confess to everything, basically. But now there are two other cases that the police are investigating that they think may well have been victims of Dennis. So what I'm going to look at just in this video, so tomorrow in the Serial Killer Sunday tomorrow, I'm going to be looking at the Gilgo Beach killer finally, Rex Heuermann. And it's all very interesting because there's some links here. BTK, Dennis Rader, he's interjected himself into this case, virtually referring to Rex as a mini-me of him. And we'll be looking at that tomorrow, look at some comparisons and listening to what Dennis's daughter, Kerri, has got to say. Kerri Rawson, her name is. She's a very interesting character. You know, she had to deal with the fact that she was Dennis Rader's daughter, and she could not initially reconcile her father, who, you know, she knew and loved, and to all intents and purposes, he was a good father. You know, this father that she loved, she had to reconcile that he was a serial killer, and she dealt with that in her own way for so long, and then finally decided that the way she's going to deal with it is to talk. And she's quite often appears on programs, etc. And we're going to be looking at her tonight talking, and we'll be looking tomorrow night about her talking about the Gilgo Beach murders and the relationship that her father is trying to make between himself and Rex Heuermann. But anyway, in this video, I just wanted to update you on what's going on with these new victims. Obviously, they're not new victims. It happened a long time ago, but these new suspected victims of BTK. So he's been named he's been named as the prime suspect. Let me share this with you, the New York Times. So this is Dennis, many years ago, of course. He doesn't look like that now. This was 2005. And he has been named as the prime suspect in two unsolved cases, one in Oklahoma and a second in Missouri. And this has come about because late last year, Sheriff Eddie Verdon was watching a Netflix true crime series when he started thinking about how close the crimes of one of the featured serial killers came to his home in Osage County, Oklahoma. So he decided to pay him a visit in prison. And over the course of a 3-hour interview, Mr. Rader, a notorious and elusive serial killer. So this was done in the El Dorado Correctional Facility in El Dorado, Kansas. Mr. Rader, a notorious and elusive serial killer known as BTK, who is serving 10 consecutive life terms, went into excruciating detail as he recounted the nearly dozen horrific murders he had committed in and around Kansas. But before Sheriff Verdon left the prison, Mr. Rader offered up a final, strange piece of information. Now, Dennis Rader likes to talk about it. That's all he's got now, isn't it? Relive the things he did. And, you know, they were horrible. You know, I know all serial killer crimes are horrible, but especially horrible because there were children. You know, there was one child, well, two children actually that he killed. He called his victims projects. He would sort of spot them somewhere and then start stalking them and then target them. He didn't know them. You know, his way of he just literally could be someone he just walked past on the street, and then he would take an interest in it, and it would develop into an obsession, and he would obsess until he finally got his victim. Anyway, just as Sheriff Verdon was about to leave, Mr. Rader told him there was one fantasy he never managed to pull off, which was kidnapping a girl from a laundromat. But officials now believe that was not true because this week he was named as the primary suspect in two unsolved cases. Cynthia Kinney, a 16-year-old girl who worked at a laundromat and disappeared in 1976 from Pachuca, Ocla in Osage County. The second was Shauna Beth Garber, a 22-year-old woman whose body was discovered in 1990 in Lanigan, Mo. I'm not sure what Mo is. You know, my geography is not brilliant. Anyway, this is the missing person fly for Cynthia Kinney. She was the 16-year-old girl who worked in the laundromat. So Mr. Rader toyed with residents of Wichita, Kansas for 3 decades, using letters, poems, and packages, and he came up with his own nickname, BTK, Bind, Torture, Kill. He lived an ordinary life in Kansas. He worked, he attended church, he was a scout leader. He was also known for being very organised and a stickler for the rules. Right, I'm not going to go into the whole crimes because that'll be on the other video. I'll direct you towards the other video. So in January, Under Sheriff Kerri Rawson, a 31-year-old law enforcement veteran, joined the Osage County Sheriff's Department and began investigating the reopened cold case for Miss Kinney, who had been working at a laundromat in Pawhuska, when she disappeared in 1976. So they poured through old evidence, including his journals, Mr. Rader's journals. He kept meticulous notes of all his stalkings and killings. Anyway, they noticed that his employment as a regional installer with ADT, a security company, ironic, isn't it? It coincided with the construction of a bank across the street from the laundromat where Miss Kinney worked. And he also had a diary entry around the same time that Miss Kinney went missing that went into detail about kidnapping a girl from a laundromat, and the entry was titled Bad Wash Day. Miss Kinney's body has never been recovered. So the sheriff's office continued to record his whereabouts and looked up all missing persons and unsolved murders in areas where they knew he'd been working. And after ADT, he went on to become a regional supervisor for the state and United States censuses. Records put him in the same area at the same time of Miss Garber's disappearance in 1990. I mean, it was strange because there was a very long gap where he didn't, as far as we knew, didn't commit any murders. And that is quite strange, isn't it, for a serial killer to just stop altogether? They thought he was dead. In the end, it was only because he started writing letters again. Anyway, it was Polaroids that Mr. Rader left in one of his journals that helped solidify the connection. The pictures contained items that likely belonged to Miss Garber, including a red blanket that matched the one that was reported missing when she disappeared. Mr. Upton said that the sheriff's office plans to ask the FBI whether they still have the blanket, which might have her DNA on it. Her remains were identified in 2021, and it was determined she died by strangulation. So, Mr. Upton said correspondence at the sheriff's office intercepted from Mr. Rader in prison led them back to the site of Mr. Rader's house in Park City, Kansas. This week, local officials evacuated around the property, and they found what Mr. Upton described as a hidey hole that contained personal effects that we consider evidentiary in value and worthy of further testing. One of the items was a pantyhose tied in a knot that was consistent with Mr. Rader's use of binding wrists and ankles. So all these things are going to be tested now. He was known for collecting trophies, and writing these letters taunting the police. So this is what's happening at the moment. Now, I want to show you an interview with his daughter, Kerri. This is what she had to say about it.
He's still recuperating. Kerri, are you okay? And can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you just fine, and I'm doing well tonight. Thank you.
Thank you for doing this. I know it's been a rough week for you with your own issues, but also then hearing about the dig, which you knew was coming. You volunteered to do something that I can't imagine was very easy for you. After 18 years of not seeing your father, you sat face to face with him. Tell me about it.
Well, starting in January, my dad was releasing news to another outlet about Cynthia Kinney after Osage investigators were going and visiting him. What was happening was that Osage was going in pretty cold, not with much information, and then my father was turning around making phone calls to people after they left, like basically building a case like for why he could be involved in the kidnapping and disappearance of Cynthia Kinney. So this information then was coming out through another outlet. And so I had been on record for months saying, no, it was just the 10, just like all experts would have told you until maybe yesterday that it was just the 10. Then in June, we found out about Shauna Garber. She was found murdered in Southwest Missouri in 1990. And that one actually really more fits his MO with the bondage, the way her body was found and the way she was dumped. So then I really was just wondering what was going on. And I reached out to McDonald County, Missouri, and they quickly got me over to Osage County, Oklahoma, and flew me in within days. And then I literally met with my Osage team, and then the next morning I was meeting my dad in prison.
I can't imagine that first moment when you were face to face. I guess a two-pronged question. What was it like for you? And did he say anything to you of value?
Oh, goodness, Ashley. First, we just had a reunion. I mean, I hadn't seen him in 18 years. He hadn't seen me. We had been cut off for 2 years. It had been letters all that time before that. So it took him a minute to process who I was. He's lost 7 inches, and he's in a wheelchair. He's pretty much rotting to his core. And so he didn't even necessarily recognize me. So we had to have a family reunion. And then I just basically laid it out that I was there with Osage investigators, and at that time with McDonald County, that my team literally was in a holding room, and that we were there to talk about serious things. And it was the first time he ever dropped his mask and became BTK in front of me.
I've just found that incredible. She said that was the first time he ever dropped his mask and became BTK in front of me, because I think, she's been through a long road, this poor woman, finding out that her dad was a serial killer, a dad that she loved. I've got another very interesting interview that we're going to look at tomorrow when we're talking about the Gilgo Beach serial killer, because it relates to him and how she empathizes with his family, because she knows exactly how it feels, to suddenly find out that a member, a close member of your family that you thought you knew all those years, that really was this person. So it's interesting now it says that was the first time she ever saw him. Saw BTK in front of her, because she could not reconcile BTK with her father.
So did he tell you anything of value, or did he stonewall you like he's been stonewalling investigators?
Oh, he was running me down rabbit holes. And then when I went back about a month later, he was running me down about 500 rabbit holes where you can't get him to focus. Or, I asked him, like, do you, if use your intellect here and tell us what you think happened to Shauna Garber, apply that. If, say, put yourself in somebody's shoes. And he came up with these theories and things, but then he gave me an alibi, and I'm literally believing him, even though I know he's a pathological liar. And then I go meet out with my team, and they're like, he just lied to you. And I was like, prove it to me. And they pulled up a calendar and proved it to me. And then I was like, okay, he's yours, taking, like, frying, because he's literally sitting there lying to his daughter that he hadn't seen in 18 years.
They have given him this immunity deal that pertains to this tri-state area where they believe at least these two women and maybe more could be. Is there anything that can actually entice your father to give up any goods? Would an immunity deal do anything, given he's in prison for life anyway?
Well, the idea is that if he would take immunity, like, it would spare my family from having to go through possible grand juries and trials as, like, witnesses, his extended family. It would spare the community. My dad basically said maybe he would like to go out like a Roman candle. It's important to understand, though, that it's not my dad pushing these. He's very unhappy with what's going on. It's the investigators doing the hard everyday work of investigating that are pushing these cases. And we're coming up against a man that's playing lots of games. My father does not want to be put in a van and woken up in Oklahoma in a holding cell for, the kidnapping of Cynthia Kinney. He wants to.
Now, this is interesting because what she says is he does not want to go. Normally prisoners, there's any reason to get out of prison, isn't it? And get a bit of fresh air on their face, or, I don't know, see a different scene. But he's past that point now. He's 77 years old. He's in a wheelchair. She says he's rotting. He's rotting in prison. He doesn't want to. He's gone past that point where he would have wanted to go out of the prison. So she's saying that this is maybe the only carrot they've got to dangle in front of him, is that if he starts being more honest and actually says what's happened, they give him immunity as long as he confesses, if you see what I mean, so that then he doesn't have to actually go to these places.
Live his life out at the prison that he's at. So that's one pressing point, that if he's not going to cooperate, then we're going to do this the legit hard way, and he's going to wake up some morning somewhere he doesn't want to be.
That's fascinating. I would never have thought that. I usually think inmates want any field trip they can get. But since you just told me that, Dennis Rader's now in a wheelchair, maybe things have changed for him. I can't thank you enough, Kerri Rawson, for joining me tonight. I know that, again, I'll repeat it, you've had a very bad week. This is a lot for you to do this interview. And I think just emotionally as well, I'm just going to say it, that's got to be really rough for you to have to go through all of this at this time. So thank you so much, and I hope to speak with you soon.
Yeah, we'll stay in touch. We're going to be on this for a while here. Thank you.
I think we will. Kerri Rawson joining us live tonight. She is the daughter.
So, it's very interesting, isn't it? Very, very interesting the way Kerri now is dealing with this. She said in another interview, which, as I said, we're going to look at tomorrow because it's more in connection with the Gilgo Beach, Rex Howman, how she sort of hid away for a long time, didn't want to talk about anything. And then now it's like the floodgates are open and she just wants to talk about it. She wants to help where she can with other families, going through the same thing. She wants to help with this new investigation. And I hope it helps her. I really do. I really feel for her, bless her. Because that can't have been easy. I mean, she did nothing wrong. And, she did nothing wrong and she's been given a life sentence in a different way. So hopefully she's putting it to, you know, productive use. Productive for her. It's helping her talking about things. Now, I just want to show you, I just want to show you now, the sheriff showing some of the findings that they found since they've gone back to his property, and they've found this hidey hole, and here are some of the things they found.
Astounding. I want to bring in the sheriff who was behind this dig today and April as well. His name is Eddie Verdon. He is the Osage County, Oklahoma sheriff, kind enough to join us. Sheriff, I read a quote from you, and it was that Rader is 100%, in my opinion, the guy. Can you tell me a little bit more about why you think that and what you found in the dig?
Well, number one, the very first time that I got to speak to Mr. Rader, he told me that he had a fantasy to abduct a girl from a laundromat, and he told me how he would have committed that if he ever got the chance. And that was without him having any information about my case. So, you know, beginning that's what started the investigation that led to where we are today.
Are you able to show me any of the items that you were able to retrieve from underneath those concrete slabs, and then also out near the sidewalk in the two locations that we dug up?
I can show you the pantyhose that we found back in April. So when you get where they're knotted or they appeared to have been around probably somebody's wrist.
Can you lift those in? I've just taken down the banner that was over top of your hands while you were showing them. So if you could just show them to the camera. This is the set of pantyhose that had the knots in them?
Yes, you can still see the knots in them, and you know where they would have been bound, possibly around somebody's wrist. And you can see it's a fairly small,
possibly
area.
A wrist or maybe ankles as well. I seem to recall a description that it might be a ligature for ankles or wrists. Is that how you feel?
That definitely they were probably used for that.
So what were the personal effects that you found buried?
Well, right now we can't reveal what those items are. We possibly can in the future, but right now we're wanting to keep that unknown.
Without being specific, and I fully respect why you have to do that, why you've got to keep that close to the vest. Without being specific about what the items were, can you characterize the items for me a little more clearly?
Well, there would have been additional items that could have been used. One in particular for restraints. You know, other personal types items that somebody would have possibly used in a hobby. Possibly some jewelry. Some different objects that we know that he used in different things.
And were these personal items for women or young girls who might be a 16-year-old cheerleader?
You know, there would have been some items that would have been definitely for younger type people, and then there was also additional things that I would consider probably for an older victim.
For an older one as well. Did these items comport with the investigation into Cynthia Kinney?
You know, I can't say that these items will specifically go to Cindy Kinney, but I do absolutely know that they will tie back to some case that he was involved with. You know, of course, we developed that information where this was from a letter that Dennis had created and had sent to another person outside of law enforcement.
Can I ask you about the writings that Dennis Rader, had etched out for a book prior to being arrested? His daughter, Kerri Rawson, told me that C9 means confirmed hit. C9 hit means confirmed hit, and PJ means project. So Project Bad Wash Day certainly would match up with, Cindy going missing from her parents' laundromat.
Absolutely, and it goes even a little further than that because he's got it dated in 1976. He's got it noted as Project Bad Wash Day, and then he's got it noted as Chapter 9, which we know is a confirmed hit. His other murders are also listed the same way. Of course, besides those items, we found a lot of other information that we feel like relates to our case, and not just our case, but several other cases.
Thank you for watching.
Yesterday was our actual second time that we'd been to that location and done a dig. So originally there was a building in that location. It had been removed back when they removed the house and the other items. And then a sidewalk was constructed right over the top of the site. So basically through our investigation, we developed some information Dennis had sent to another person describing where items that he basically claimed as trophies and maybe driver's license from other victims had been placed and had not been found. On the first trip up under the edge of the concrete, we found a set of pantyhose that appeared to have been possibly tied around someone. And from that information, we went back to Park City and visited with KBI. And yesterday they removed the concrete for us to actually look where the information said those items were buried. And in those locations, we found several items that we feel like could possibly relate back to victims or maybe to binding shoes with victims.
So you found pantyhose. Are you able to link those pantyhose at this point to any specific case?
Well, at this point, they're collected and they're in, and they'll be evaluated later time to see if there's any DNA or any type of evidence that could be related.
Any other items that you can share that were located, Sheriff? I saw we have the video. You can see where the sidewalk was split. I assume that's where the shed was at one point. Any other specifics on the items that you found?
Well, I can tell you the items were all probably 14 to 16 inches below ground. One of them.
I do like the way, I'm sure the American police are not perfect and it probably goes from state to state, but I do like the way they discuss things so calmly and they're not defensive. He's giving what information he can without giving anything away that he's not supposed to.
Appeared to be a manufactured, constructed hole that had been lined with composition shingles to possibly protect the brick at the bottom as kind of a base for that. And then items have been placed in there. We did not find driver's license, but we did find items that would be personal type items that obviously were significant for somebody to go through that effort to place those items there. And again, the information that we were working on was originally created by Dennis back in 2008, sent to non-law enforcement. So we have no idea whether someone else had removed items from that location prior to that sidewalk being put there or not.
Wow, this is a big development, though. The fact that you found items that could be significant, including the pantyhose. I'm curious, Sheriff, you've actually went and talked with BTK, Dennis Rader, several times yourself as part of this investigation. What was that like? Has he been forthcoming with any information related to these cases that you're looking into?
We've had long conversations, interviews. Information has came out that we feel is very relevant to our case, and then going through items that we've discovered and been shared with other law enforcement on, the search originally done back in '05. Those items have tied in, and from those documents, we believe he's tied in with our case and our prime suspect, and possibly on several other cases in Kansas and one in Missouri.
Yeah, it's my understanding that this is almost a game to him, that he calls this whole investigation that you're working on something about like following the Yellow Brick Road, and that he's even nicknamed you the cowboy. I mean, do you get the sense that he's taking any of this seriously?
Oh, I think he's absolutely taking it seriously, but again, he's had a
See how calm he is, so he's not rising to the fact that, oh, he's nicknamed you the cowboy, he's calling this investigation the Yellow Brick Road. That's how police are supposed to be, aren't they? Because the job that they do, and if you can't be calm like that, if you can't not rise, not get defensive, you shouldn't be a policeman.
a history of cat and mouse with police since the '70s, up until his capture,
Yeah.
and I don't expect a change now.
Well, Sheriff, incredible work on your part all these years later, knowing where to dig and finding those items. We'll certainly stay on top of the investigation, and we appreciate you joining us today.
Looks like there's two more families that might get some resolution as to what actually happened to their loved one. And let's hope so. Let's hope he decides to give some answers, because, if they can find something to convince him with, like this, offering him immunity and promising that he doesn't have to actually go out of the prison because he doesn't want to go out of the prison. His daughter's been to see him, as she says, hopefully someone along the line, because what happened originally when he was arrested, he did start talking about all these things. So he may end up just wanting to talk. And although it's horrible in one way, it would be great for the families to just know what happened to their loved ones, because they're left, one the body's not been found at all. The other one, the body was found, but there's no answers to what happened to them. So, okay, so I just thought I'd let you have that update about BTK. As I say, I will put a link to the original video that I did, which tells you more about him and his crimes, etc., if you're interested. And so he's 77 now, in a wheelchair, rotting away in prison. That's what his daughter says, Kerri. So thank you, Kerri, I think, for having the balls, basically, to go, because that won't have been difficult for her to, to come out and start talking about her father that she loved. She did love him. She says she still loves him. She's got to reconcile that he is two people, and she's working on that all the time. Anyway, so there'll be more from Kerri tomorrow in the Serial Killer Sunday as well, talking about her father, but also about the coping mechanisms that the family of Rex Neuhauer, or whatever, Huerman, I can never get his name right. So, okay, so remember to always live and love wisely, carefully, and until I see you again, may your God go with you. Thank you so much.